are the Mythbusters. Adam Savage. And Jamie Heineman.
That's perfect. Hold it there.
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience.
Okay. Freedom!
Joining them, Carrie Byron.
High explosives and electricity. Woo!
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Hey guys, we got a new letter today.
Cool, why don't you go get it?
Here's the letter. Read it, Jamie.
Dear Mythbusters, it seems like solar panels take sunlight and magically convert it to energy for everyday use. I heard that this process is too inefficient to be worth the financial investment, and that other sources of alternative energy may be better options. Could you explain how photovoltaics work, and if there are actually any environmental benefits to using them? I know that sunlight is abundant in many third-world countries, but perhaps the costs of solar panels make them inaccessible. What benefits can this technology provide for them, and is there any way to make it available to these citizens in spite of the initial costs? From Lisa.
The two main questions arising from this letter are about the environmental desirability of the product and economic viability.
I'll look into the technical background of solar panels and how they're used.
I'm going to learn about how solar panels are made and discover whether or not they are helpful to the environment.
I will talk about economics and the solar panels' third-world applications.
First, we will discuss what solar panels are and how they work. A typical silicon solar cell is made up of 4 layers. The top layer, where the sunlight hits the panel, is a thin anti-reflective coating to capture as much light as possible. Also in this top layer are the metal contacts through which the electrons travel to conduct electricity. The next layer is an N-type crystal, which is doped with a very small amount of an impurity such as phosphorus, giving it extra conduction electrons. The P-type crystal is similarly doped, but with an element such as boron that has less valence electrons and creates an abundance of holes. A hole is just the absence of an electron. This p-n junction creates a diode, allowing current flow in one direction but not the other. The final layer is another metal contact. When the photon from the sunlight strikes the cell, it is absorbed, creating an electron-hole pair. The electric field pushes the electron towards the top metal contact and the hole towards the bottom contact. This creates a voltage, and connecting the two contacts makes a circuit, where the electricity can be collected and put to work. There are massive amounts of solar energy that hit the Earth every day. In fact, the solar incidence on Earth is between 4 and 5 orders of magnitude greater than our current global energy demand. This sunlight is available nearly everywhere it is needed, as only a small percentage of the human population lives far enough north or south where solar incidence is low. To learn how this massive resource can be harnessed practically, we went to Bruce Clements, a professor of material science and engineering at Stanford University, and an expert on photovoltaic technology.
In areas where there's good solar resource, I'm a big fan of putting solar photovoltaics on roofs, especially of commercial buildings where they're using a lot of power during the day when the sun is shining, and you can just take that power and ship it downstairs to the building itself.
Every year, scientists are making developments towards improving the efficiencies of solar photovoltaic technology, allowing us to capture a greater amount of energy with smaller areas and for cheaper prices. Many different technologies are being investigated beyond the first-generation crystalline silicon. There are the low-cost second-generation thin film, the third-generation high-efficiency multi-junction cells, and even cheap organic solar cells. Each of these technologies balances efficiency and cost to create different cells appropriate for different applications. Some local companies have put the innovative minds of the Silicon Valley to work to bring diverse solutions to the problem of capturing solar energy in ways that are cheap and effective. Solyndra, a Fremont-based company, specializes in commercial rooftop applications with their cylindrical thin film panels that take advantage of the white rooftops of many large commercial buildings.
With a typical flat plate solar panel, you have to angle them towards the sun and then space them out so that they don't shade each other. Solyndra panels are laid flat, so we make use of the extra space on the roof, allowing us to get more solar panels per rooftop, resulting in the most energy produced per rooftop.
AQT Solar, based in Sunnyvale, has developed a method for making drop-in replacements to silicon solar cells with cheap thin film technology. This allows them to keep costs down by using the existing infrastructure for the module assembly from the silicon cell industry.
AQT has developed a unique sputter-based process where we develop our devices with high precision using atomic layer deposition.
These companies and this technology are all very exciting, but what happens on a cloudy day like today, or at night when the sun isn't shining? For the answer, we went back to Professor Bruce Clemens.
Solar is great. It produces electricity when the sun is shining. It doesn't produce it when it's not. So you have to have some way of integrating it, and there's different ways that people are looking at doing that, including having grids over large areas interconnected, solar arrays over large areas interconnected with the grid so that you can average spatially, and also people are looking at using electricity to make some sort of fuel that then could be made back into electricity, or just having people having storage, some sort of storage devices in their homes which could store electrical power, batteries, or maybe even battery-powered cars that could be wired to the grid when they're not being used.
So we've seen that there's a huge amount of energy to be harnessed from the sun, and many companies are working to improve upon a system that is already practical. Although intermittency could be a technical barrier for PV technology, there are plenty of viable solutions to alleviate these problems. Now let's pass it over to Carrie to check out environmental effects of photovoltaics.
Now it's time to discuss the environmental desirability of solar panels. Sustainability has become more and more of a pressing issue as stronger evidence of the negative effects of pollution arises. There is a growing need for the production of energy through cleaner, greener methods. If it is not acted upon, this will turn into this. Energy must be captured and spent in ways that do not require the release of carbon dioxide and do not cause any other negative externalities. Solar power can be a great way to capture energy, but does it harm the environment along the way? We are going to investigate this myth to figure out if solar panels' effect on the Earth will shine like the sun or be a complete dud. Let's first try to think about this problem by understanding how solar panels are made. Here's a picture that demonstrates how monocrystalline PV is manufactured. The main component of solar cells, silicon, comes from a very plentiful resource, sand. The sand undergoes a long process in which it is reduced, burned, melted, dissolved, and remelted until it becomes highly purified silicon, which is then melted and recrystallized through the Shirlsky process. These slices are then doped, coated, assembled into modules, and installed. This is the finished product. As you can tell, this process is quite lengthy and requires enormous amounts of energy. There are a couple different kinds of solar cells. We have first-generation PVs, which include silicon solar cells, and second-generation PVs, which include cadmium telluride solar cells and copper-indium selenide cells. To further understand this matter, let's ask an expert. PhD student Zibo Chen of the Chemical Engineering Department at Stanford University. We asked our expert, are solar panels environmentally unfriendly?
A lot of the crystalline silicon solar cells out there require a lot of really energy intensive processes, a lot of heat. You're talking about heating these things up to hundreds, if not over 1,000 degrees Celsius to get the manufacturing done. And to do that, you need a lot of energy, and that means that you need to get that energy usually from some really energy dense source, which is usually your typical fossil fuel. So you're right back to where you started.
We are now aware of how energy-intensive PV manufacturing can be, but what about the number of toxins that are released into the atmosphere? How can we safely deal with heavy metals that are used with the production of photovoltaics?
In terms of just having a lot of these heavy metal elements around, it's not like we don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. You don't want cadmium, but that said, everybody's got a gigantic lead-acid battery sitting in their car right now. We have the infrastructure to deal with it, and it's not like we can't live without it.
Now that we know about potential environmental issues regarding photovoltaic production, let's look at some research that studies these issues. In an article posted on ScienceDaily.com, scientists report that the manufacture of solar cells produces far fewer air pollutants than conventional fossil fuel technologies. This is good news for PVs, demonstrating that they are environmentally friendly. In this study, life cycle emissions of various solar panels are calculated and compared. Ultimately, it was found that although there are energy costs involved with the production, installation, maintenance, and disposal of PVs, they are not substantial enough of costs to come even close to overcoming oil's rate of pollution. PVs are a good energy source. This addresses potential harm to workers during production, stating that none of these potential hazards is much different in quality or magnitude from the innumerable hazards people face routinely in an industrial society. Through effective regulation, the dangers can very likely be kept at a very low level. After doing all this research, we can conclude that photovoltaics are environmentally friendly. Myth busted! Now let's check out the economic viability of photovoltaics.
First, let's examine the economics of solar panels in the US. There are two factors that influence the amount of money solar panels will save you on electricity bills. One, the amount of money you spend on your current electricity bill, and two, the amount of electricity your solar panels will be providing. The amount of money you save will vary significantly by region for two reasons. First, the cost of electricity varies. For example, electricity is more expensive in LA than it is in Atlanta. Second, the amount of sunlight differs by region. First, let's look at the energy situation in LA. This table demonstrates how the amount of energy value savings depends on the time of the year. For example, in LA, we can save $705 in 1 year. But if you move down south to Atlanta with the same setup and a different cost of electricity, the savings are less because of the lower cost of electricity throughout the year. Notice how the amount of solar radiation available each month influences the amount of savings? There's one thing we surely cannot ignore from this comparison. You are sure to see the savings on your electricity bill, and in a few years, the solar panels will pay themselves off. Now let's take a trip to Africa to find out whether or not solar energy has made its way to other parts of the world. African countries with sunlight all year round are tapping this free and clean energy source to light up remote and isolated homes that have no immediate hope of linking to their national energy grid.
No electricity around here at all. In rural areas you might have to wait 50 years until the grid will actually feasibly reach those areas. So we are trying to use solar energy to actually enable things to happen now. The main thing that we're trying to do at Solar Aid is enable people who don't have access to electricity to have access to clean, renewable energy, specifically by using the sun. But it's very much up to the community here as to how they would use that system.
The best way to figure out how this technology is affecting people in Africa is by listening to the testimonies of people who have been impacted by it.
See trainers, how solar works, how we can assist people within the community.
Those panels are there to pump water to come in the hospital here.
Those guys for Solar Aid bring materials to us, we assemble them and we sell them. We make our own business.
So here we've got solar energy creating electricity where there is no electricity, which generates an income for the community.
As you can see, the benefits of this technology are widespread. It is already making quality of life much easier thanks to outside investments into these countries. The implications of the current benefits for local economies are very exciting to think about.
So Lisa, solar technology can be environmentally and economically beneficial, but it still has a ways to grow.
Sure does.
They've already proven successful in Africa, and that's only the beginning.
Myth
busted!